This PRU 14, General Election 14, I am fired up. I want clean elections. I want an end to corruption. Salam Bersih. Hello Malaysians. This PRU 14, General Election 14, I am fired up. I want clean elections. I want an end to corruption. I want a fair judiciary, and I want an end to abuse of power. So I know my votes count, and together with all of you, our votes count. So do come over and join Bersih's campaign to satukan tenaga, kalahkan penipuan. Bring on the heat, panaskan PRU. And I challenge my sons, Azumin, Aziman, and Azimi to panaskan PRU. And to all of you who are watching this video, bring on the heat. It's not so bad.
Dia makan lagi? Ada sesiapa bawa cili padi hari ni live? Kita suruh Maria makan. Are you up for it? Okay, taklah, kita jangan bagi. Nanti dia tak boleh sampaikan speech ya. Okay, seterusnya seperti yang saya nyatakan tadi, kita ada pengurusi Bersih 2.0 untuk menyampaikan ucapan beliau. Tetapi sebelum itu, izinkan saya bagi sedikit introduction. Although I think Maria needs no introduction. Definitely needs no introduction, but the secretariat put me up to this. They asked me to say that Maria, kawan baik Jamal Yunus. Sebab mereka selalu bertemu di mahkamah. When the next date is coming up, Maria telah mula berkecimpung dalam aktivisme sejak di bangku universiti lagi. She was a troublemaker dari muda sampai sekarang. Maria ini seorang, to say that she works hard is an understatement. Okay, sampaikan pihak kerajaan kesian beliau terlalu penat bekerja. Dia bagi 10 hari rehat dekat Maria. Duduk di dalam 10 hari. Dia kata tak apa, kesian, duduk je. She was unlawfully detained under SOSMA for 10 days, put in solitary confinement. Maria was deemed a threat to national security. It's something that does not make any sense, but we are at that time now that any challenge is considered a threat. Sejak saya mengenal beliau, saya tahu beliau seorang yang sangat bekerja keras. I don't know where she gets the energy from. When she was put in solitary confinement, I think the Secretariat and SC, we miss her a lot, and among the things that we miss is her emails at 5 a.m. You know, it's a mystery to us when she actually takes her rest. So we get her email at 5 a.m. in the morning. So Maria, to say that she's dedicated to this is also an understatement. I don't think I need any more further introduction, so I will call her to the stage.
Thank you. Salam sejahtera, salam bersih. Thank you very much for coming on a Sunday afternoon. Yeah. I'd like to actually thank everyone who actually has been with us for a long time. Dan api bersih telah membara sepanjang 9 tahun. It's already 9 years. Sejak 2009 hingga kini. Jawatan kuasa pemandu bersih dan saya dengan rendah hati berada di sini bersama anda semua. Anda semua adalah sebab bentuknya bersih pada hari ini. Dan semangat, komitmen serta penyertaan anda telah banyak membantu dalam perjuangan untuk pilihan raya bersih dan adil. Seorang penyokong, I remember one of the supporter, I'm not sure if Ambiga remembers this quote. Mereka kurungkan hati bandaraya, tetapi dalam kurungan terlahir persaudaraan kita. Mereka melancarkan gas pemedih mata dan meriam air ke jasad kita. Tetapi mereka hanya hendak menakutkan kita. Kita pergi ke jalan raya mencari demokrasi. Namun yang dijumpai adalah negara baru ini. And we have a new nation with all your participation. Anda yang berada di sini juga telah berkorban untuk negara ini. Sekarang bergantung kepada kita sebagai rakyat Malaysia untuk terus mendedikasikan usaha kita bagi meneruskan perjuangan kita. Yakin tugasan agung yang terhampar di hadapan kita. Saudara dan saudari, negara kita kini terperangkap dalam kes rasuah yang besar, yang amat besar. Bukan sahaja 1MDB. I don't think I need to explain. Kita pun ada Felda, FGV, MARA, tabung haji, KWSP, NFC dan lain-lain kes yang mana kegunaan dana tidak ada accountability dan tidak boleh dipersoalkan. Penggunaan undang-undang untuk menindas dan mendiamkan suara rakyat seperti menggunakan SOSMA, Penal Code, POTA dan lain-lain undang-undang yang tertindas. Semua ini menunjukkan bahawa situasi hak asasi manusia semakin parah di negara kita. Tidak ada penghormatan kepada kedaulatan, undang-undang dan perlembagaan persekutuan. There's no respect for our constitution. SPR tidak menghormati perlembagaan dan melanggar the principle of approximately equal. Dan juga SPR tidak menghormati hubungan tempatan dan pentadbiran, the local ties, dan tidak menghormati pengundi baru apabila ada cubaan bagi mewujudkan halangan untuk pendaftaran mereka. Apa yang kami rasa terlalu kecewa ialah tidak ada apa-apa tindakan daripada kerajaan. There's absolute impunity for those who violate the laws. So have we made a difference? Bersih bukan sekadar pada masa ini, bukan sekadar satu gabungan pembaharuan pilihan raya bersih dan adil. Tetapi kini kita merupakan gerakan demokratik terbesar di negara ini. We are the biggest movement, the biggest democratic movement in Malaysia. Semua ini kerana anda yang fokus dan berdedikasi untuk mempunyai negara yang baik. Bersih telah membawa politik baru. Kami telah mengubah minda rakyat untuk mengajak rakyat ke himpunan untuk mereformasikan pilihan raya dan kemudian meningkatkan kesedaran mereka untuk menuntut pembaharuan institusi. We have changed the narrative. Sekarang bukan business as usual anymore. Kita tidak boleh terima business as usual. Kita mau menuntut bahawa kerajaan, menteri-menteri, ahli parlimen dan semua yang berpegang kuasa untuk menghormati hak asasi manusia membina bersama-sama Malaysia yang berintegriti, di mana kita boleh dengan bangganya berkata kita adalah rakyat Malaysia. Bersih telah membawa 500,000 orang ke jalan raya dan menyatakan perhimpunan aman adalah tidak mustahil di Malaysia. Dan perhimpunan aman boleh dilakukan tanpa gas pemedih mata, penangkapan dan meriam air. We have done with that. Bersih 50 hari tambah 11 hari kita berada di jalan raya. That's the achievement of the people. Untuk membantah dan menuntut reformasi yang kita mahukan. Peristiwa ini adalah suatu yang tidak pernah berlaku di Malaysia. Bersih telah menjelajah ke 246 bandar dan kampung-kampung di seluruh negara menerusi konvoi Bersih 5 untuk menyampaikan tuntutan bersih. That is a big achievement. Dan kami telah merentasi batasan etnik, menatasi budaya ketakutan dan menyatu padu rakyat Malaysia. Kami telah memperkasakan 80,000 rakyat Malaysia untuk membantah persembadan semula yang tidak adil. Thank you. That's your contribution. Dan kita juga dapat menubuhkan jawatan kuasa pilihan Parlimen mengenai pembaharuan pilihan raya. We have managed to get the Parliamentary Select Committee on Electoral Reform in the Parliament. Dan Speaker Parlimen telah menerima memorandum daripada Bersih tentang mereformasikan Parlimen. Ini semua adalah semangat kita. Semangat kita yang diiktiraf di peringkat antarabangsa juga. Dan kita telah mendapat 2 anugerah yang prestigious, The Guangzhou dan juga Yayasan Taiwan untuk Demokrasi. Bersama-sama kita telah mencapai semua ini dan saya harap kita akan teruskan lagi. Saya faham jalan untuk perubahan adalah yang panjang. Dalam pembinaan gerakan demokrasi rakyat ini, kami sedar bahawa keadaan yang mencabar tersedia di hadapan kita. Kejayaan kita tidak dapat diukur dengan bilangan orang yang datang ke jalan raya, tetapi diukur dengan kebahagiaan, kemakmuran dan juga keamanan rakyat di Malaysia yang dapat wujud dalam persekitaran yang bebas daripada pemusuhan, kebencian, keganasan dan kemiskinan. Sebagai rakyat, kita bercita-cita untuk mempunyai, dan ini adalah quote dari Nelson Mandela, we aspire for a democracy in which the new government will be bound by a higher standard of rules, embodied in a constitution, and will not be able to govern the country as it pleases. Semasa PRU 13, kita semua telah keluar mengundi untuk menentukan masa depan kita. Inisiatif pemantau juga telah membuahkan hasil dari segi membendung penipuan pilihan raya. Ini semua untuk tidak akan mungkin tanpa perangan yang dimainkan oleh rakyat Malaysia. Dan dengan pilihan raya yang akan datang, kita mempunyai tanggungjawab yang terbesar di hadapan kita. Penyertaan semua rakyat Malaysia adalah penting. Sekali lagi, kita perlu membakar semangat dalam PRU 14. Setiap undi anda penting kerana ianya adalah sebahagian daripada undi kolektif yang akan merealisasikan perubahan yang kita ingin lihat. Oleh itu, slogan kami, satukan tenaga, kalahkan penipuan, ini adalah menggambarkan dan melambangkan kesatuan dan juga dedikasi kami untuk demokrasi. Dan kita telah melalui 2 pilihan raya dan 5 protes di jalan raya. Dan kita faham kuasa rakyat. Dan kuasa ini kita hendak membawa ke PRU 14. Kita boleh melakukan sekali lagi dan kita mesti satukan tenaga kita semua. Bersih 2 mempunyai 3 kempen. Yang pertama ialah bantahan terhadap persembahaan semula yang tidak adil. Information ada di luar dan cadangan. Apa yang kita hendak ialah membantah cadangan yang mana persembahaan semula itu adalah tidak mengikut perlembagaan. Dan kami ingin mendapatkan beribu-ribu bantahan kerana pada masa ini kita telah melewatkan proses persembahaan semula ini untuk 4 tahun. Sudah 4 tahun kita telah melewatkan proses ini dan kita mesti teruskan dengan semangat ini. Kempen yang kedua ialah pemantau. Thank you. Mungkin banyak lagi penipuan akan berlaku pada PRU 14. Dan rakyat perlu sekali lagi lawan penipuan. Jadilah pemantau pilihan raya untuk Bersih. Kita ada 3,000 pemantau pada PRU 13. Dan PRU 14 kita akan bertambah lagi. Dan satu lagi kempen dan last kali ialah satukan tenaga, kalahkan penipuan. Ini adalah kempen yang akan bermula pada sekarang sampai hari mengundi. Kami menuntut pilihan raya yang bersih dan adil dan harap anda semua akan menyertai dalam kempen ini. Dan kami akan menjelajah ke seluruh negara. Dan apa yang kami hendak ialah mengadakan sesi bersantai di kedai kopi dengan rakyat, mengadakan perbincangan supaya mereka boleh faham lebih dalam tentang tuntutan-tuntutan daripada Bersih. Dan kami harap lepas perbincangan dan bersantai, mereka boleh membantu telefon 10 lagi kawan-kawan, saudara mara dan rakan-rakan untuk menyeru mereka keluar mengundi. Saudara dan saudari, sehingga kini semangat rakyat tidak pernah gagal mengagumkan kami. Cabaran cili padi yang anda lihat dalam video ini telah dimulakan oleh seorang pemuda wanita yang bersemangat untuk melakukan sesuatu demi negara ini. Dia berani memulakan cabaran cili padi untuk memberi perhatian kepada PRU 14 yang akan datang. And we should actually give her a clap. Dan saya harap anda semua akan terima cabaran ini. Satu lagi inisiatif daripada sukarelawan Bersih ialah Jom Undi. Jom Undi adalah video animasi pendek yang dihasilkan dalam 6 bahasa. Bahasa Melayu, Cina, Tamil, English, Kadasan Dusun dan juga Iban yang didedikasikan daripada sekumpulan rakyat Malaysia kerana mereka semua hendak membuat sesuatu untuk negara ini. Mereka kata negara dan rakyat kita layak mendapat sesuatu yang lebih baik. Banyak pembaharuan diperlukan dengan segera, tetapi terdapat pandangan yang lain mengenai jalan ke hadapan. Walau bagaimanapun, terdapat satu persetujuan yang umum, iaitu keperluan untuk perubahan. Satu-satunya cara untuk merealisasikan perubahan secara sederhana adalah melalui peti undi. Sertai gerakan Jom Undi ini untuk melakukan perubahan melalui peti undi dengan berkongsi animasi video mereka. Dan kita akan tunjuk video ini sebentar lagi. Sekali lagi, Bersih telah menjadikan perjuangan untuk demokrasi sebagai suatu realiti dan bukan angan-angan lagi. Bersama-sama kita adalah kekuatan yang diakui oleh orang ramai. Dan saya harap kita semua boleh memberi impact yang besar, impact yang kuat pada PRU 14 yang akan datang ini, dan juga membawa demokrasi ke masyarakat ini. Jadi jangan lepaskan undi anda. Bersatu padu, undi dan ubah. Satukan tenaga, kalahkan penipuan. Salam bersih, terima kasih. Bersih, bersih. Bersih, bersih. Bersih, bersih. Hidup rakyat. Terima kasih.
Thank you, Maria. Okey, kita akan teruskan dengan pelancaran kempen ataupun sub-kempen iaitu GOTV. Yes. Sebelum itu, saya ingin menjemput barisan Jawatan Kuasa Pemandu Bersih, Maria, Beth, Rama, Syarul, Dr. To, Gyokchi. Okay, come. Apa itu GOTV? GOTV adalah satu inisiatif bersih bersama JJ, JJ ada? JJ di mana anda? Okay, tak ada. Okay, tak apa, kita teruskan. GOTV ataupun Get Out to Vote adalah satu inisiatif untuk dari Bersih dan orang ramai untuk memulakan satu kempen di mana kita, setiap orang boleh participate, ya, boleh bersama membuat satu panggilan kepada kenalan-kenalan kita untuk mengajak orang untuk keluar mengundi. Jadi mudah. Adakah kita semua boleh lakukannya? Satu panggilan, one call each. Boleh. Jadi kita mulakan dengan Syarul pada hari ini. Siapa agaknya Syarul akan telefon, ya?
Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Hi, this is Cheryl. Is that Patrick?
Yes, this is Patrick. Hi, Cheryl.
Oh, hi, Patrick. How are you?
I am very well, thank you.
There are hundreds of people here just wanting to
okay.
hear your voice. Say hello to them.
Hi, people. I hope you're hearing me loud and clear, because these phone lines have a way of doing strange things at forums organized by Bersih, if you know what I mean.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Patrick, what's your feeling on the coming general elections?
I'm not hearing you properly, Cheryl.
Can you share your thoughts on the coming general elections?
Okay. Can I share my thoughts with you on the coming general election? Well, my thoughts are rather what's the word I should use? Well, I'm actually very worried, and
very worried
at the 14th general elections as our last chance to get things right for Malaysia. After which, I think things will become very, very much more difficult, if not impossible.
Right.
So this is our last chance. So if we don't do it now, we're doomed.
Yeah.
Well, not actually doomed. It's time to start applying to immigration departments of your favorite country.
Okay. Wow.
And of course, over the recent months, we've heard there's a movement to get people, especially the younger Malaysians, to spoil their votes or not vote at all.
Right.
But I've been reading the arguments by these campaigners online, and although they say to their listeners that they shouldn't vote or spoil their vote because there's absolutely no difference between the BN and the opposition, so why bother to vote then? Just let it be. And a lot of that is being said, but what the campaigners don't tell the listeners is what is the alternative. If not alternative, what would be the result if they really spoiled their votes or didn't come out to vote at all? What would happen to Malaysia in the next 5 years? And can we afford to even think about letting it happen?
Right. Well, I'm so glad I called you, Patrick, because you echo exactly what Malaysians feel, that this is our last chance. Can we? Absolutely. Can we? I'm very sure that you're going to come out to vote.
Of course.
Yeah. Now, can you do us a favor? Can you do all the people here in this hall a favor? Can you get at least 10 of your friends and family to go out to vote?
Well, I'll do more than that. I'll get more than 10 for sure.
Great.
Yeah.
Right. That's the only way kita boleh kalahkan penipuan. Thank you, Patrick. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Applause for Patrick.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, kita tak setuju dengan konsep MLM ya, tetapi untuk GOTV ni kita guna pakai sistem yang sama. Seorang call seorang lain, bawa 10 orang. Boleh? Kalau saya buat sekarang boleh? Okay, saya nak turun ke bawah. Saya nak anda semua keluarkan handphone dan mula telefon satu orang. I'm just going to randomly pick anyone. Tekanan, pressure. Siapa saya nak ambil ni? Ada telefon? Kita kacau Kak Wan boleh? Okay, tak bersedia, tak apa. Kita kacau. Okay, can you call someone now to go out and vote? Can? You can call him now. Boleh keluarkan handphone semua? Okay, kita cuba ya. Biar riuhkan Dewan. Kita riuhkan Dewan. Pretend. Hello. Pretend also never mind. I won't know one. Okay, one person is calling. Siapa lagi boleh call? Call. Okay, kita nampak saudara di sini. Who are you calling?
I'm going to call Jaya Murli. Can you give me a minute?
Can. Okay, saya bagi. Pilih nombor. Kita call ya. Okay. Okay, never mind. Anyone? Alright.
Hello? Can you hear me? Yes. Every person bring out 10 people go and vote to fight the penipuan. Okay? Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, ada situ lagi. Jap. Oh, tak boleh lalu, tak muat. Saya pusing bawah. Alright. Aini, come. Alright. 10, okay. Because it's your father, 50 orang.
I'm gonna make everyone hear him. But he doesn't know this.
It's a surprise. Oh, you stop picking up.
Hello?
Yeah.
This is your daughter. Okay, I'm calling you. Everyone can hear you now.
Why?
Oh, yeah, because I am at Bersih program. Okay, everyone can hear you, and we are running a campaign called Get Out to Vote. Okay, and now your task is to call 50 of your friends and families.
How many?
50. Alright, you have to call and get your friends and families to get out to vote on the election day. Can you do it?
Chulung and Yulin, can you come back?
79 already. Okay, you better call another 50. Okay? Alright, okay. See you.
Thank you. Okay, who's next? Alright. I pass the mic.
I just want to share and call just an example how to call.
Okay, can.
I'm a Malay. Okay? Yeah. I want to I'm an actor, Malay. Okay? I call my father in the kampung. Okay. Ring, okay. Then here is Ahmad. Okay. This month, father, I can't give you any allowance. I have a problem because the situation here is very bad. In future, I may not be able to give you the allowance. The only way out is to vote for Harapan. Father, I beg you, if you are not voting for Harapan, I think I have to come back to stay in your house, because I may be jobless. So thank you, Father. You must get also all your friends to vote. Their children also will be out of job. No allowance for you all.
Thank you everyone. That was great. So kita boleh buat ni ulang-ulang setiap hari. Bangun pagi je call. Hello. Boleh tolong undi? Hello. Siapa nak keluar undi? Kita buat ni hari-hari. Boleh? Okay. Alright. Kita ke program seterusnya. Terima kasih sekali lagi. Berikan tepukan yang berkaitan dengan jom undi. Baik, can we play the video? Thank you. Sebelum kita ke sesi forum, terdapat volunteer-volunteer bersih di belakang yang akan mula mengedarkan tabung-tabung untuk donation, dan kita mengalu-alukan sebarang sumbangan dan kami amat berterima kasih ya. Jadi seterusnya saya menjemput panelis Dato Ambiga Sreenevasen, Datin Paduka Marina Mahathir, Profesor Edmund Terence dan Cik Jean Vaneisha, dan moderator untuk sesi kita pada hari ini adalah Cik Rama Ramanathan.
Salam Bersih. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here on this Sunday afternoon. What we have as this part of the program is a panel discussion of the usual format where we have 4 people who will be speaking, and then we will have opportunity for question and answer. Before I get into that, I think there's one important point that needs to be made, and that is that Bersih is not a partisan political group. So we don't support any particular alliance, and we're basically a non-government organization, which simply means that we reserve the right to criticize everyone. When you call and when you make those phone calls, and I know you're all very excited and you want to go out and make those phone calls, remember that the call is to ask people to come out and vote, and who you ask them to vote for is your choice. So of course we all have our preferences, but it's your choice. Now, there is a brochure that all of you should have had, the program booklet for today. And if you look in the booklet, you will see that there is a profile. There is a profile for each one of the speakers who are up here today. The way we're going to do this is basically focus on the fact that we're talking about reform through the ballot box. And in elections, it's all about manifestos and what you promise the rakyat in the manifesto and what the people want. So we are going to do it in this manner. I will just introduce each of the speakers and then ask them to speak. Each one has a set time allocated to them, and I will remind them 1 minute before their time is up. I'm pretty strict about this. But the most important thing that I also want to say at this point, and I'm saying it right now, although the question and answer session is later, I'm going to be very strict at question time, which means that I'm not going to give people opportunity to make speeches from the floor. I know we have several politicians and wannabe politicians and activists and NGO leaders, and I know you all love to speak, but I'm not going to let you do that. So what I want you to do is listen carefully to the speakers, and then when you have a question, just say your name and one organization that you belong to, if any, and then ask a question. Okay? There is no need to make a big speech. There's no need to give a lot of background about yourself or about the nation, but just ask a question, and preferably direct it to one or two of the panelists. So please be disciplined about this so that we can hear questions from a lot of people. It doesn't matter if we don't have all the questions answered. The most important thing is for the questions to be raised and for all of us to talk about it, not only with the politicians but with each other. So having said that, this is the order in which we're going to have the panelists speak today. I'm going to start with the youngest of the panelists. Jean is actually a political science student. She's an activist, and she has spoken in many groups, and you'll see that she's a very, very active person. And she engages with people on social media, and she speaks to small groups as well. Following that, we're going to have Datin, Paduka, Marina. Wow, I actually said that out. I keep saying Marina. And then we will have, and really I think Marina needs absolutely no introduction. I've read for columns for, I don't know, going on 30 years, shows how old we are. So she's a very, very well known, so I think she needs no introduction. Ambiga, of course, is again very well known. Anytime people say Bersih and ask to name someone, her name comes up. And she's, of course, a lawyer and a very powerful speaker and thinker who helps us to frame issues. And finally, we will have Professor Terence Gomez, who teaches political economy. He's at University Malaya. Many of you will know that he has published very widely papers and books. And he's a very sharp analyst who has been following things in Malaysia for a long time. So without any more speaking by me, I will now pass the mic to Jean. Thank you, Jean.
Thank you, Rama. 5 years ago, on the 8th of May 2013, Malaysians took to the streets to express their discontent over the results of GE13. My generation sat affixed in front of our television screens, and at the time, too young to vote, but old enough to know that a wrong had been done. Still, our parents told us, don't go for the rally, you're too young, it's too dangerous. Motivated by fear of my forebears, I listened. And it took me about 10 minutes to rationally work out that I didn't have to listen. Because if there is nothing to fear, and if the collective mirrored what I thought, why should I be afraid? So hi everyone, I'm Jean, the Secretary General of a little movement we call Challenger. We started, I think, 2 years ago when the Deklarasi Rakyat was, I think, being mobilized by a collective of NGOs and youth leaders and activists. I was new. I didn't understand any of this, but I knew that I had to do something, and my friends felt the same. So that rally, the blackout rally, it lit a fire in my generation. We were too young then, but guess who's of age now? We have ministers who tell us to speak up with, they tell us that we should speak our minds, that we should control our future, that we have a say in what is going on in our societies. But then they clamp us down with things like AUKU. It's enforced. And I think a few of them, my friends who are here today, have been silenced using that same draconian law. Now we throw this term around a lot, draconian law. I'm just going to list down a few for those of you who are new to this. Special Offences Act, the Prevention of Crime Act, Prevention of Terrorism Act, Sedition Act, the University and Universities Colleges AUKU, National Security Council, and the Peaceful Assembly Act. And the problem with all of these laws is that they allow for provisions by people we didn't necessarily elect to impede on our right to communicate with them. It's not a matter of the rakyat being biadab terhadap pemerintah, tapi sebaliknya pemerintah dan rakyat tidak mempunyai ruang untuk berdialog matang. That is dictatorship. Now we have a duty we owe to ourselves and our children to effect change. For change to happen, we must rebel. And how do we combat these systemic flaws? I think later on we're going to be going into detail by these people who have worked their entire lives probably combating all these laws, which is crazy. Well, with systemic rebellion, that's how we do it. I look to Thomas Jefferson, one of the founding fathers of the United States and a thinker behind the US Constitution. I know he was a drunkard, but he said some really profound things. He was of the opinion that dissent is the highest form of patriotism. Are we angry? Are we upset? My generation is angry. We are upset, and we're looking for every avenue that we have to show that dissent. Now this brings me to how we need to channel our anger. Vote. I think just now that launch of Get Out to Vote, I loved it. I loved it so much. And I implore you to vote. My generation especially has a fondness to volunteer with NGOs and with CSOs. And I understand why there's a distaste to volunteer with political parties. Observing politics in general is draining because everyone fights for different things at different times. It's a game of who gets what, how, and why. And to add to that, we throw in the fact that the product of allowing the ruling coalition to be in power for over 60 years, by being divisive, by fermenting racial politics, by being toxic, it's easy to want to block out the noise. Now, being disattached from the processes of government does not stop us from feeling the effects of poor governance. And the youth feel it more, I think, because we're the ones who have to buy our houses first. We're the ones who have to sort out what our political views are. We need to know how to control ourselves before we can put out how we feel in governance, I think. Some of us aren't that privileged, where we just, shut out noise. And some can't afford to take the trip down to PJ from Shah Alam, even today. I have friends who cannot afford a Grab car to come down here today. So I hope it's being covered live. Sorry, I'm a bit nervous. Yeah. And have you seen the shelves at the supermarkets this Chinese New Year? Have you gone shopping recently? It's empty. The things you wanted is not there. I couldn't find FNN one point. It was just 2 types of drinks. There's something wrong, and it's being reflected in our daily lives. And we're not tying it back to government policy. We're not tying it back to bad governance. And I think that's what we need to acknowledge and address in this next election. Oh, and by the way, Happy Chinese New Year. Now, we've identified these causes. We've identified the causes of these economic discrepancies by the misappropriation of funds of the highest order. There are people like YB Rafizi who revealed the state of corruption that occurred among our public officials, and he's being charged with jail. In the peak of civil dissent, a public official has decided to tell the truth and is being punished for it. These are not values I want for my country. These are not values that the youth want. Now, what do the youth want? And I'm here to address that today, because there's a lot of... I myself do not know how to answer this. But this is something I think we can all learn to ask. And this I address to public officials. I don't care which side of the spectrum you're on. If you're listening, then I will vote for you. Tell us what you're offering. Don't get annoyed when we ask what's been done or what's going to be done. We'd like to hear it directly from you. Show us you're clean and you have a commitment to transparency. And if you're running again for public office, please declare your assets. And when you're there, declare it yearly. Be vocal and reach us. Don't assume we seek your opinions. Because if we don't know you, and if you don't actively try, a well thought out message that doesn't have an audience is the same as having no audience at all. Don't engage in toxic attacks. Don't fire up cannons and go all guns blazing in the first sign of dissent. Embrace it, debate it, adopt the ideas that work, and be as public as you can about it. These are really basic things that youth want to hear. I have friends who are part of the Undi Rosak campaign, and these are the same things that they've told me. I mean, when you get past all the anger and the hate and the toxicity of the whole conversation. But it's really basic, and I think that's what I'm here today, is to represent those ideals. And that's what I want to see in this next general election. If you really want the youth to come out in the millions, this is what we want. That's all. I think.
Thank you very much, Jean, for a very passionate presentation. If I have 3 things that I take away from what Jean said, and I'm a threes man, channel our anger, vote, tie it back to government policy. This is something that we don't often do. But when we see empty shelves, tie it back to government policy. And I think the third one is so refreshing to hear for someone who's a younger person. Don't engage in toxic attacks. Don't engage in toxic attacks. A lot there. Thank you very much, Jean. And now over to Marina.
Assalamualaikum and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me here. I'm going to talk about some things which are very dear to me and I think should be dear to everyone, which is the freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom of information, and freedom of the press. But before I do that, I just want to give an example of why all these things are important from a very current event that's happening right now. As you probably know, the Winter Olympics just started on Friday. You may have watched the opening ceremony. I wonder whether you all noticed that there was a whole bunch of athletes who were not wearing any uniform and were not marching under a particular flag. This was known as the AOR, I think, Athletes of Russia. And the reason they were doing that, they were not allowed to march or compete in their national colors or under the national flag, was because Russia Russia has been caught cheating through doping in the past 2 Olympics, at the last Winter Olympics in Sochi and also at the Summer Olympics in Rio. And as punishment, and because the Olympic Committee didn't want to punish every single athlete, because not all athletes cheated through doping, they are allowing them to compete, but without the national flags, without their national colors, and also that nothing that they win will ever be recorded in the Olympic history books as being Russian wins at all. So it's quite severe punishment. Now, how did all this happen? All this happened because there were people who had a conscience, who knew this was something terrible that was happening and decided to report it. There were people within the Olympic committees, within the anti-doping agencies who started to investigate. They looked for information, they got the information. There were reporters that used that information and publicized the fact that the Russians were cheating. So if you run a race and someone has an advantage through doping, it's not a fair race. Similarly, like our elections, if someone has an unfair advantage through cheating, of course it's not a fair race. And that's what we're faced with today. And because of the whistleblowers and the investigations and the freedom of information, that's how the Russians got punished at the Winter Olympics this year. So, using that analogy for our situation here, when it comes to elections, when it comes to laws, when it comes to government policies, the importance of freedom of information cannot be overstated. How is the press going to report on misdeeds, etc., if they could not get information? As you know, in our country, a lot of information that comes from the government is put under OSA, the Official Secrets Act. And therefore, what happens is either people don't know or at all, or the people who do know are not allowed to say anything, publish anything without punishment. But then, how does this serve the public interest? I mean, that's the point of doing research, that's the point of doing surveys to find out what's wrong so that we can correct them, the government can correct them. Perhaps it's okay if they keep it quiet, but then they quietly also do something to correct it. But we know that's not happening either. And so what should be paramount? Protecting themselves, people who might not have done their jobs or who might be doing their jobs wrongly, or the public interest. Now, I'll give you an example, for instance. Child marriage. We found out about child marriage, the statistics about child marriage, actually through another set of data, which was about HIV testing among couples getting married. And so it was inadvertently revealed. Of course, this led to a lot of outrage and public outcry and all that. So what happens now is that now you can't find the marriages broken down by age in the government stats. That's what you call sweeping under the carpet. Does it solve anything? No. That's why we need a Freedom of Information Act. Also, it's in the case, most recent case, should be very fresh in your mind, of Rafizi Ramli, who is being jailed for violating the Banking Act. It's not about the information per se, it's about letting the information out. Now, of course, personal data, personal information, banks should be protected, because we all certainly don't want all our bank accounts to be revealed to everyone. But on the other hand, if there's an issue of public interest, when there really isn't any argument that the information is important to the rest of us, then there should be some leeway, and someone like who has tried to bring it out should not have to go to jail for 30 months. I don't know whether you know, but there was a previous case where a bank clerk was done under the same act for revealing a minister's bank accounts, and she was jailed for 2 days and fined 20,000 ringgit. So compare that with Rafizi's sentencing. But and when you think nowadays banks are really also very concerned about where their depositors' money comes from, you'd think that everyone should be also worried and on Rafizi's side. But no, I would have thought he would be clearly on the side of the banks. So along with freedom of information, of course, is freedom of the press. The press needs to be able to publish the information. They should be allowed to get the information, and they should be able to publish the information so that we all benefit, so that we can all question. And this relates also to a very, very fundamental freedom and right that we should have, which is freedom of speech. If we are unhappy about something, as citizens who are invested in this country, because we love this country, because we want to make it better, we ought to be able to question things. But today we have ridiculous curbs on freedom of speech, where people write a comment on Facebook or on social media, even WhatsApp. People who are academics giving an academic opinion. People who write things in their columns which are perfectly well-founded, are all being done in various ways by whether it's the government or by groups that are certainly aligned with the government. And these are curbs on freedom of speech. Of course, freedom of speech is a scary thing for a lot of us. We don't want everyone to be able to scream out all sorts of nasty things to us, to each other, because, of course, this is not going to make us all happy. But that's the thing about freedom of speech. In most cases, it's not absolute, but it is necessary because, one, it is a right. Everyone has a right. But everyone needs to be agreeable to the type of limits that we have. It should not be arbitrary, it should not be biased, it should not be one-sided. So a few years ago, I was a member of a group, government-appointed group actually, called the NUCC, National Unity Consultative Council, and there goes my bell, very quickly. We had suggested a possible alternative to any curbs on freedom of speech, which was the hate crimes bill, where everyone has a right to say their opinion unless they were inciting violence. And I think that's a very, very viable red line. So if someone says they're going to go and break down things or whatever, or telling people to go out and harm people, then that's when the law comes down on them. But the rest of the time, we can say what we want, and even when we don't like what people are saying, they have the freedom to do it. So I think that's something that should be considered as part of the reforms in the hopefully new government. Thank you very much.
Thank you for those very helpful comments. If I again just pick up three things that Marina said. I liked this, the conscience. People with a conscience can make a difference. I think that's very powerful, and I think there's no one here that doesn't have a conscience. The other thing is the one about the, even if you don't publish the information, at least act on it. And we're in a situation where, you know, there are child marriages, and the number of child marriages become known because of published information. And then what does the government do? They stop publishing the information, not take action on the child marriages. So it's about a government that responds to data and how necessary that is. And the third thing, which is again very powerful, because I think of Marina mostly as a columnist and a speaker, and it's this, the importance of exercising good citizenship, which means saying out in public what you think needs to be done. And that's the freedom of speech and the freedom of expression. So these are very important points for us to bear in mind about the kind of Malaysia that we want. So thank you very much for that. Now moving on to Ambiga. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. When a Prime Minister gets so overwhelmingly powerful, with basically no limits on his powers, or very few, it means that our institutions are not working. How many of us remember when the DOJ first made their announcement about the 1MDB and the asset seizure in connection with that? How many of us sat back and thought, oh, come on, surely the Prime Minister can't survive this one? Do you remember that feeling? Yeah, and it was a very reasonable reaction, because no Prime Minister should survive that. And in any normal country where, well, we are normal, but in any country where the institutions are working, he wouldn't survive that. But here we are, on the eve of elections, with the possibility that this Prime Minister may continue as Prime Minister. So, for me, that is a very critical point. And why do I pick on the Prime Minister? Well, because he is the most powerful man in the country at this point. And it is a test of our institutions, whether or not they are prepared to limit his powers. And so far, I don't think our institutions have come out very well. For example, the 1MDB, there was an attempt in court to unseal the Auditor General's report. That failed. That failed, although the Auditor General, under the Federal Constitution, is actually performing a public duty. He's auditing for us, not for UMNO or for any particular party or for one person. It's in the public interest. And yet, we could not get, or the parties concerned could not get that document unsealed. That's just one example. Now, I was asked to talk about the independence of the judiciary, and I will say this: I'm not going to talk about the ordinary commercial matters and so on, which are carried out creditably by the judiciary on a daily basis. That's what cases are filed in court for. I'm going to talk about cases which involve public interest, because we seem to get a different result when it relates to those sorts of cases. It leads people to ask whether everyone is equal before the law. In other words, is everyone treated the same way before the law? Does the opposition, for example, have a worse run than those in government? I don't have to answer that question. You know the answer to that. Marina mentioned Rafizi. Well, there's so many others, actually, who have, Tian was here a minute ago. All have had to face, Tian, here you are, have had to face jail sentence. You went to jail recently, Tian. Have had to face sentences which they shouldn't have to face, which, if the shoe was on the other foot, wouldn't happen to the opposing camp. And that's where people then question the independence of the judiciary in these circumstances. Now, how many of you followed the recent Indira Gandhi judgment and thought justice was done in that case. Do you all agree? I think all of us felt that. Remember that feeling, because that's how you feel when justice is done. But likewise, very shortly thereafter, we get a couple of other cases where you can see that justice was not done. So the one thing that's important for people to realize is the Rakyat knows when justice is done. You feel it. And that feeling was a good feeling. The feeling, what we felt after the Indira Gandhi case was a good feeling. Because that judgment is a momentous judgment, upholding all the principles that we hold dear under the Federal Constitution. And yet, there are so many suits against the Prime Minister, and he hasn't even had to come to court. It's either struck out, or something happens, and so he is not held to account anywhere. The Attorney General's Chambers closes the file on 1MDB. I'm talking about administration of justice as well. Closes the file on 1MDB when the rest of the world are opening files continuously on the 1MDB matter. Again, something's wrong. So an institution is only worth its salt when it is prepared to hold the most powerful man in the country to account. Until that happens, we cannot truly say that we have or that we have institutions who are above reproach. So that's possibly a long time coming. We are hoping it's going to happen soon. But that is one of the key issues. Now let me talk about the independence of judiciary and the Judicial Appointments Commission for a minute. The Judicial Appointments Commission, of course, is made up of basically retired judges and also the sitting Chief Justice and the office holders. In the UK, the chair of they have 14 commissioners, 6 are judicial members, 2 are professionals, 5 lay members, 1 non-legally qualified person. And the chairperson of that commission is a lay person. In 2016, and I think he carries on till now, it's Lord Ajay Kaka, who is a professor of surgery, University College London. That's how powerful that institution is, completely independent. And they are the ones who are responsible for appointing judges. So that is something, that is a reform I would like to see take place in relation to the independence of the judiciary, in relation to the judiciary. Now, because I have 5 minutes, I've got 10 minutes, I'll move on to the next point, which is the cleaning up of the electoral roll. I've been asked to touch on that. We have a real problem with the electoral roll. Maria has been saying that, Bersih has been saying that over and over and over again. And this is where I must commend Bersih. And I say it, I'm not there anymore, so I can say it without fear or favor. They have been following closely on the heels of the Election Commission. The Election Commission has no peace from Bersih, and that's the way it should be. They shouldn't have any peace, because they are on a continual basis doing things to the redelineation, to the electoral roll. I think, if I'm not mistaken, the opposition have difficulties getting copies of the electoral roll now, which wasn't a problem before. And you have a very flawed electoral roll. The electoral roll in Selangor is something that came up in the case in Selangor. I won't say much about it because it's on appeal, but it is something that has happened around the country. Some of the voters have no addresses. Now, why? To me, I find it absolutely astounding that anyone can operate in that way. They have an explanation. They say they allot a certain code, a locality code, and that's enough. I can't see how that can be enough. So electoral roll, unfortunately, the problem is this. We have a section in the Elections Act that doesn't allow a challenge, Section 9A, that doesn't allow a challenge to the electoral roll, not the Elections Act, one of the acts, doesn't allow a challenge to the electoral roll. So what do? You have an election commission who, again, of course, is hardly independent. They might as well have their office in the Prime Minister's office and save the taxpayers some money lah. So, and for all intents and purposes, they operate under directions there. Now, so let's not beat about the bush, right? Call a spade a spade. We're so close to elections, we might as well. So, for me, actually, because of that, we are unable to hold the Election Commission to account. We have gone to court, and so far the cases have held, and I will say so far because they are still on appeal, so we hope that that would change. So far, the attitude of the courts is to say you cannot interfere in anything that the Election Commission does. Now, as a lawyer, I'm averse to that proposition. I am completely averse to a proposition that tells you that any institution in this country is above the law or cannot be checked by the law. For me, the courts are supreme. The courts and the rule of law is supreme. And the courts have the power to hold anyone to account. And that is the way it ought to be. So the electoral roll, let me tell you, my suggestion for reform for electoral roll in India, and in fact in Bangladesh they had a project done by the UNDP who actually cleaned up the electoral roll, and we could have invited the UN to assist us with that. What they did was they had photographs on the electoral roll. India has photographs on the electoral roll, and that would really minimize possible fraud. Of course, I'm sure we'll find ways of getting around that too, but it is at least somewhat of a check if you have photographs. Actually, it is not difficult to clean up a roll. What is the difficulty? Have you no tracking information on citizens of this country? But of course, we are very generous with who we allow to vote. We also allow non-citizens to vote. And they may not be on the roll. But there you are. This is the problem here. You cannot. You see, your electoral roll is such a critical document because that is what determines who can vote. And if that is not clean, then it is a very, very difficult to keep track and to ensure that it's a clean and fair election. Now, when we had a session in the Bar Council recently, and someone from India came and gave a talk about the electoral roll and their system there. They have electronic voting and so on. They have outposts, they have even polling booths at the Himalayas and so on. Everywhere, everyone votes. Okay, I mean all those eligible. So I asked him a question. So he's the one who told us they have photographs. I asked him a question. You know, I think maybe we bought our indelible ink from India, but we may have. But ours washes off within 24 hours. What about your indelible ink? And he said, it lasts for 15 days. Okay? So that is another thing that needs checking into, all right? Indelible ink, well, let's see whether they're going to, I suppose they have to use it, I don't know, but whether it washes off. My last point, since I'm running out of time, is limited terms. I come from a background of limited terms, okay? Bar Council, 2 terms, 2 years as president, and out you go. Whether you are good, bad or ugly, out. You cannot stay there anymore. And what that does is, and everyone thinks, oh my God, someone is so good, we can never find a replacement. Nonsense. The next person always rises to the occasion if you give them a chance. And I'm a big proponent of limited terms. I think at least then if we have someone that you can't get rid of, you're just stuck with them for 8 years lah, or whatever, you know. You might be able to tolerate that a little bit better than someone that you can't remove at all. So I'm really a proponent of limited terms. So I think the opposition has talked about that. For me, that is an excellent move and must be one of the first things that they do. So With that, Rama, I think my time's up, so I'll stop now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambiga. I'm sorry I have to keep you to your time. I did give you extra time, as you know. There is so much there, and this is 10 years of watching the Election Commission, at least 10 years of watching the Election Commission closely, and many, many more years watching the judiciary. I find it hard to pick three things, but if I could just highlight, the PM is the test of our institutions. Really, if someone can get away with all the 1MDB stuff, what better statement could there be? The PM is the test of our institutions. The fact that no institution should be above the law. There are actually many cases where it seems that judicial review isn't allowed. There are so many. In fact, I think the Bar Council has a committee that focuses on this. So that's part of the new Malaysia that we're hoping for. One where the law is in fact paramount. But I think probably the final statement that you made is this kind of a very fresh statement. If the Bar Council, has to change its head after every 2 terms, and you said the next person always rises to the occasion. I think I'm gonna print that and put that on my wall because that also happens in so many companies. They all say the chief is irreplaceable, and then the chief goes. Suddenly, he's caught doing something immoral or whatever, and suddenly he's gone. This irreplaceable man is gone, or woman is gone, and somehow or other the company continues to do so well. So if it can happen elsewhere, why not with the office of the Prime Minister? The next person always rises to the occasion. And now we have Professor Terence.
Thank you, Rama. Let me start by thanking Bersih for inviting me to speak on the issue of political financing. Before I start, I'd like to say I'm going to take a non-partisan stand, and in that sense I'm very happy to see here some prominent politicians, Teresa Kok, Wan Aziza, Matsabu, Tian Chua. They have served the nation well. I want to start by saying that. They have served the nation well, and I hope you will go out and vote in the next election, because we have to do something about the Barisan Nasional. Having said that, let me get to the crunch of the matter. The issue of political financing, there is no political will in both coalitions to support real change. Let me take you back in history. When Bersih had their first rally, was it 2006, 2007, there was a lot of support from the opposition for the reforms that Bersih was calling for. And then we had an epochal election, 2008. 5 state governments fell. In the peninsula, the popular vote was lost. A sea change had occurred. And Najib, when he came to power, he said, I am going to institute reforms. And one of the reforms that he said that he would institute was this: I will check political financing, because it is leading to corruption, rent-seeking, and patronage. He said it. And within a few months, Pamandu was assigned the task to do it. I know, Pamandu came to see me. We had a lot of chats on it. And within a few months, the whole thing was shelved. Transparency International then took up the task of coming up with reforms. And it prepared a full set of reforms. And we took it to Parliament. We first met the politicians from the opposition wing. They said no to the reforms. And when we asked why, they said, look, if we are now getting a lot of donations, and if we get donations, if we disclose it, they will go after our donors. A very good point. A very good point. True. But what is the alternative? Because money politics in this nation is a scourge. We then went to meet the Barisan Nasional. And we were told, quite openly, We are not accepting these reforms. And I said, why? After all, Najib said he wants to institute reforms. Then they said, you are asking for institutional reforms. If we do this, if there are checks and balances in the system, we will lose power. And we are not stupid. The reforms came to a halt. Transparency International published a book on it. There was no take-up. And then we went into the 2013 election. And you all saw the 2013 election. It was a deeply monetized election. Even from the opposition, when I went to the ground and I was looking, the opposition members were saying, where is all this money coming from? And yet nothing happened after 2013 until, first we had 1 MDB, and even then, nothing much, until it was disclosed that money, 2.6 billion ringgit, went into the personal account of the Prime Minister. A donation, it seems. It was alleged that the money may have come from GLCs, possibly alleged, may have come even from 1MDB. Take the money out of the country and bring it back into the country. And Najib then disclosed much of the money was used in the 2013 elections. His response to the criticism, let's set up a consultative committee. And that committee was set up, a cabinet consultative committee. I was invited. I went in. When I listened to what they were asking, I said, look, this is not enough, we must do more. They said, no, just come up with a new law. And I said, that is not enough. You must have institutional reforms too. Otherwise, it's unfair to the opposition. I did not join that committee. Instead, with G25 and 70 NGOs, we came up with a full set of reforms. A full set, legislative and institutional. You can go to the G25 website and you will see it there. We sent it to the Prime Minister and called for a meeting. There was no response. And this is a Prime Minister who said that he was going to institute reforms on the financing of politics. No response. There was no response too from the opposition. I did speak to the opposition. And I said, here are the reforms. Please take it. Use it in any way you want. But you must have reforms. This was particularly important because 1 year later, the consultative committee issued their reforms. And the reforms favored the Barisan Nasional. No cap on expenditure. No cap on income. We are trying to stop the monetization of politics, and they are saying free flow of money into the electoral system. This is nonsense. And yet, where is the alternative proposal from the opposition too? I was told recently, when I spoke on a similar issue at another forum, can you please wait, it's in our manifesto. I say to you now, I am not interested in a 2-liner or 3-liner or even a paragraph in a manifesto. We have the full set of reforms here. Why don't you just take this? This is the issue that we now have to confront in GE14. This is going to be a hotly contested election. And I ask the question now, and I'm sure you're asking the question now. After all, Bersih asked me to come here and speak on this issue. Where is the money coming from for this election? Can you please tell us, and I say this both to the opposition and to the Barisan Nasional. We want to know. It is our right to know who is funding the politicians in the run-up to this election. And the abuse of the GLCs. They can be abused in a manner in which they can muster support in particular constituencies. We know that for a fact. Where are the reforms? So let me say this today. What are we confronted with today? There is a serious contestation going on today between civil society and politicians. This contestation is about money. Our politicians are not listening, even though I can tell you now, 2 sets of proposals have come out now, one from TI, one from G25. They are not listening. They don't want it. That is a scary thought. If we do not know who's funding the politicians, how do we know that public policies that will emanate from our government, state and federal, will be in the interest of the rakyat and not in the interest of the funders? So today's debate is this: how do we get all politicians to support the reforms that we in civil society have been demanding? Apart from what Bersih has already outlined in this booklet, I like to propose a few. Can be done tomorrow. First, political funding and expenditure. The Election Offences Act is very clear. For a parliamentary seat, you can spend only up to 200,000 ringgit per candidate. And for the state assembly seat, it's 100,000 ringgit. But the law is also very clear. Those limitations are only for individuals, not for parties. So the individuals will declare after the election, I spend 200,000 or 100,000, but the volume of money spent by their parties in these constituencies will be far exceeding what is permissible under law. Can we get a commitment from all politicians that they will abide by the spirit of the law? The second issue, I think, and it's not unfair to ask politicians to declare, and I'll give a big figure here, 10,000 ringgit and above, please tell us who the donors are. 10,000 and above. Please declare, because more than that, it can make a difference. The second issue, the abuse of the GLCs. We wrote a book on this. It's called Minister of Finance Incorporated. Just came out in August. It's on the bestsellers list. Even today, it's still on the bestsellers list 6 months on. And even as I walked in today, a politician told me he's wondering, what am I doing here? I said, don't you politicians read? The GLCs are being abused. All politicians cannot sit as board of directors of GLCs. All politicians on both sides, please step down as directors of GLCs. Let it be run by professionals. I'm not asking for much. And I don't see why they shouldn't do it, because GLCs are very, very ubiquitous in this economy. They must be run well. We cannot have politicians sitting there. The second issue, and this is very simple. Can we please ask the Prime Minister to stand down as Finance Minister? The Finance Minister controls all the government-linked companies, including KWSP, EPF. Wow, you all got 7% interest rates. How nice. Complete abuse of power, if you ask me. They control Khazanah, PNB. How will they use the GLCs in this coming election? I am worried. What kinds of patronage will they use? I like the PM to also, both sides, make a commitment. In future, no Prime Minister can hold the portfolio of Finance Minister. It is nonsense. And the third issue, and I hope on both sides they will agree to this, all GLCs must be made accountable to a select parliamentary committee led by the opposition. This is in both federal and state level. You have to monitor the GLCs. They are too important. They are not taking the GLCs seriously. Finally, the third recommendation, full political financing reforms. The Cabinet Committee prepared a set of reforms which they submitted to the Prime Minister. It was only on legislation, not on institutional reforms. It doesn't favor the opposition, I can tell you now. Even we, with the group of G25 and the 70 NGOs said, no, this is not good enough. But I asked this. The Prime Minister said that the reforms will be tabled before the GE14. Where are the reforms in terms of tabling it in the next parliamentary sitting? Why is he still sitting on it? Why can't we at least have a debate on it? They do not want to have a discussion on political financing in the run-up to the election. I'm glad some people find this funny because this is not a joke. This is very serious. We have to stop. If the politicians don't want to do it, let us, the NGOs and civil society, do it. I can understand why politicians don't want to do it. I want to end by saying this. The aim here is not to undermine political parties or politicians. The aim here is to support them, give them adequate funds. Wong Chin Huat came up with a fine proposal. Wong Chin Huat of Bersih and Penang Institute came up with a fine proposal of public funding to support all political parties, to let politicians do their work properly, but accountable and transparent in the way they do it. Why is there no take-up? If you don't want to do it, we will do it. But please support the endeavor, because this is in the interest of free and truly fair elections, and it is for the nation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Terence. That was a very rich presentation in a very short space of time. Thank you. I find it hard to actually pick up just a few because there are so many. But perhaps there's one thing that's at the core of what Professor Terence said. The interests of the rakyat versus the interest of the funders. So if there's one thing that, if there's one thing that captures the essence of what you said, the interests of the rakyat must be balanced against the interests of the funders. Who should win? Clearly it should be the rakyat. And how can we know if it's all secret? There's a lot in there, but if I could just, I know that Professor Terence has done so much research on Minister of Finance Incorporated and GLCs and so on. But this is a very direct presentation which really is born out of, actually I think the TI report was more than 10 years ago, right? 8 years ago. I don't know. His name has been associated with political financing for so long, I get it muddled. But there are proposals out there, and I guess one of the big points to be taken away here is what is political financing going to look like in GE 15? It's too late for GE 14, but what's it going to look like for GE 15? What's the likelihood of it changing, and who is more likely to change it? At this moment in time, it doesn't seem clear, and I think that's a very important point. The other very important point is who's watching the GLCs? Who should be on the boards of GLCs and parliamentary select committees? We really don't have any effective parliamentary select committees right now, and the subject of parliamentary reform is a huge subject that Bersih and a few others have joined together and have actually put up a paper on. But again, no takers. But enough from me, enough of my summarization and my statements. I have been told that we actually have another 50 minutes. So we have actually more time than I thought we would have. So I'm going to open it now for questions from the floor. This is how we're going to do it. Please, and I know Prof. Terence may be a little disappointed by this, but I really don't want political speeches, because the objective today is to hear from the rakyat. You can certainly ask questions, direct them to the panel, and I'm really going to limit it to 1 minute each. So come up to the microphones. The microphones on, I see one over there. Is there one on that side? Yes, there's one over there. Someone already there. So please make it a question. No need for long-winded introductions, backgrounds, and all these things. Make it a question. Direct it to someone. it can be 1 or 2 persons on the panel. Okay, begin with the lady in red.
Hi, I'm Renuka, a member of the bar. And one of the questions that's been in the back of my mind is, we know that a lot of power is concentrated in one particular political party, UMNO. And the reason that power is there seems to be because of the power that lies in among the division heads, perhaps. And I'm wondering if Bersih or any of the other panelists can share a little bit about initiatives or action that is being taken into looking at perhaps the transparency within that process. Because, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I get the feeling that, for example, the Prime Minister gets to stay Prime Minister because he's got his band of merry men who make him invincible. And it doesn't matter what else is going on, there seems to be, he's invincible because of that band. So I'd like to know if there's any work being done into sort of unpacking that structure.
Thank you. Gentleman in blue.
This is about Bersih's exercise. There are some 4.6 to 5.1 million people who do not register as voter. There are some 6.6 to 7.1 million people who do not vote. What is Bersih going to do about this apathy attitude of the citizen who does nothing, who are not concerned about the politics of the country?
Thank you. Yes, gentleman in red.
Very good afternoon to everybody. My name is Alfred Tong. I speak to the people, to the public via Facebook. I just want to open up with my thoughts, a little bit thoughts here. I don't know why.
Okay, keep it short.
Yes, keep it
you
very
have
short.
1 minute.
I'll keep it very short. Yes.
Yep.
We go by the ballot paper. I, as a voter, go by the ballot paper. But there are groups and parties go by the cash. Go by the cash. I hope you understand what I mean. Huh? Okay. Now, I was a bit disappointed because, Chairman, the forum discussion is actually titled Reform Through the Ballot Box. But so far I haven't heard of any of these touching on that yet, except that Professor Gomez touched on reform. But my question is, I want to jump the gun. Now, this is not my question. This is my people whom I called just now. They reflect back to me. But definitely I will go to vote lah. Don't worry. This is my serious question. This is their serious question. I will address to any of the panel who have the conscience to speak. I don't want to name who. Okay? If Maria wants to speak, Maria can go and speak. Okay? Now I just write it like that. I don't know why I write like that. I just read it out lah. When they are clear malapportionment and gerrymandering on the EC. This is what I usually go to the media, social media, hear all these things lah. But the mainstream paper, I don't know lah. I never see lah. Okay. Their question is, why should I go to vote this GE14 when they are? I think a lot of cheating lah. Like the electrode, what? The list all names but no address, and then you all know all these things lah. I just signed up anyway to protest for the delineation. So the question is, what do you advise them? They said I want to go there and undi rosa lah. I don't want to go there because anyway, what are the chances of PH winning in GE14? If they don't win in GE14, I believe they will win in GE15 lah. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. I'm going to take 2 more questions. Okay. Sorry, gentleman in black over here, and then I'll come to you.
Okay. My name is Jimmy Teo. I'm a volunteer. I have one question to ask to all the panel. Can we ask ourselves how to make sure we have a guarantee to replace what I call The coolie, the group of coolie is our coolie. Okay, the group of employees that is elected by us, chosen by us. Can we guarantee? And we should not think of any chances of 50-50. It must be guaranteed. Can I get the answer? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, last one in this round. Go ahead.
Good afternoon. My name is Sam Hamid. I will couch my suggestion into a question. I think we are grateful for this meeting, for the information which are good for ourselves. Yeah. However, I believe we are just talking to the converted. We all go back and blah 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 on multimedia because national papers will not print anything. Therefore, I suggest that we carry this fight one step further. Go direct to disseminate all the information you have given now. How? Since the multimedia, since the papers are not going to print anything, there are newspaper vendors. All you have to do is print out your suggestions in a small pamphlet, go to the newspaper vendors early in the morning, pay them $15 per 100 copies. They will insert your pamphlets, and these pamphlets will go direct to the houses. This is where you should be, these are the people you should be giving information, not us here. We are already converted. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you for that suggestion. Okay, I am just, if you have more questions, I'll take them in the next round. Let me just kind of reword them as questions so that they're clear. The first one was about transparency within parties and the domination of division heads and so on, and how, and I think it really relates to how difficult it is within UMNO to replace the leader of UMNO who becomes the Prime Minister. I think that's what the question's really about. It's intra-party. So it's basically, a party leader surrounds himself with a band of merry men, as it was put, and they just keep him in office, and what, if anything, can be done about that. So that's more about internal party issues that basically affect the nation. The second one was basically about 4 to 5 million unregistered voters and 6 million who basically don't vote in the population. What will Bersih do about that? The third one was, in light, and I guess it's Bersih who should be thanked for this, in light of the terrible malapportionment and gerrymandering that there clearly is in the nation, and everyone apparently can see it, except, should I say, I don't know, the judiciary. But it seems everyone can see the level of malapportionment and gerrymandering there is. And also, thanks to what Professor Terence said, many of us can now see that it's basically money that decides, who enters office. So in this environment, why should people even go out to vote? That's the third question. The fourth one, okay, I'm not sure that that's a simple question, but it basically says, how do we ensure that we replace, I think the word that was used was the coolies, and that's spelled C-O-O-L-I-E-S. Initially I thought it was coolies in Tengku Razaleigh, but I think he meant coolies. How do we replace the coolies? And make sure that, how do we ensure that we can replace them? I don't know who would like to answer that question. The final question was not so much a question, it was a suggestion saying that instead of just speaking to groups such as these, why not think of the news vendors as a group of people who can help us to distribute information? And the suggestion that was given was that we print this information and distribute it through national newspapers, I think through the vendors. I think that's a suggestion that NGOs present can take into consideration. I know there are many possible issues with that. But if we could just, and I would just like to, I don't know, can we begin with you, Ambiga, with those? Thank you.
Just my quick thoughts. On the first issue of the division heads, etc., well, you know what? For me, it is all about money politics. I think Terence may be better off answering this question, but it's corruption. This country is about corruption. I mean, it's endemic. So that is what creates these powerful divisional heads, who are then, who then support whoever the leader is. So for me, there will have to be a rewriting. I mean, if there's a change of government, there will have to be rewriting of rules relating to political funding, controlling monies that flow through these parties, etc., etc. And I think that will go a long way towards resolving that problem. Now, the next issue is on the number who are not registered to vote or don't go out. And what is Bersih doing about this? Bersih has been doing a lot about this for a long time. But you can only take the horse to the water, you can't make it drink. We can only, persuade people that it is absolutely vital that they do exercise their right to vote. Short of coming up with a reform of compulsory voting, there is not much else you can do except to persuade. And by the way, Bersih is you. So it's everybody's job to make sure that people go out and vote. Not just the job for the steering committee. And what I would say is that the question on ballot, on why should I vote? Well, I would say this. When there's clear malapportionment, cheating, etc. That was there in the 13th GE. All right? But because there was such a high voter turnout, nearly 85% voter turnout, okay, I actually think some of the seats went the opposition way. And I believe they won, and they did, in fact, not I believe, they won the popular vote. So, a huge voter turnout can mitigate some of the irregularities. So, the cheating can be mitigated by a high voter turnout, which is why that's what we are aiming for. And this thing about not voting, now, what favors are you doing to either yourself or to the country in taking that stand? But let me add, I respect that stand. That is the right of anybody if that is how they feel. And to me, the arguments are already out there. I don't want to engage in that argument anymore because the arguments why you should vote are already out there. But I will just say this. If we had a clean and fair election, then people not voting or protest votes has an impact. May make sense. But when you have such a flawed system, no one cares. No one will even know that you spoiled your vote, for goodness sakes. It's supposed to be secret. So I would urge those who are thinking of spoiling their votes or not going out to vote, think again. Wait until the elections are clean and fair before you consider that. Okay? That would be my advice to them. Now, how to make sure there is a guarantee to change? There's no guarantee ever on any of these things. All I know is it's imperative. There's no guarantee, but I believe it is imperative there is change. Because 60 years, udahlah, enough lah. You don't need another year. Let's not give them another year, okay? Let's bring change and see what we can do with that. Finally, speaking to the converted, I agree. I think that is absolutely, but I know Bersih, as I said, I commend the work Bersih does. I don't think people understand how difficult their work is. Because they are keeping tabs on what the EC is doing, but they also go out and persuade people and also spread information. But it's also, of course, up to the political parties as well to do that. So I do agree. I think we need to take the message out there, but I do believe everyone has been doing that. I think the political parties have, and so has Bersih. Thank you.
I'll just quickly run through. About the UMNO structures, actually, for a long while, the UMNO structure has been described as one of the most democratic structures there is in a political party, because there are elections all the way from the grassroots all the way up. But the issue is not so much the structure as how it is abused, and that is through money. So if the top starts doling out money in order to get support, then it trickles all the way down, and that is the real problem, rather than the actual structure of the party. So again, it goes back to the whole issue of political financing. Well, you know, unregistered voters, I think we've done quite a lot in trying to register people. It's been a hard slog. I've been part of that voter registration campaign. We've managed to reduce some of the numbers. Now the issue is getting people out to vote. And like Ambi says, what do you actually get if you don't vote? I think we need to look at the two prime examples of what happened when people decided to stay home. One was Brexit, and the other was Donald Trump. If that's what we want, well, there you go, stay home. And why should I vote when there's, you know, it looks impossible, there's so much cheating? Well, I think the case has already been made. We need to have high turnout. But, you know, if you don't vote at all, whatever it is, things are just going to continue. And if you're happy for things to continue, well, yeah, don't vote. But, you know, I think it might take a while to get things right. Yeah, it might not be this one, it might be the next one, who knows. But are we just going to take it all lying down? I think it's our duty, every single one of us, to get out there and fight. Even if we think it's not going to make the slightest difference, I think our own conscience should push us to make them, at least we feel we did something. We're going to go down fighting, all of us. But we're not going to take it lying down. And I think that's the only way to answer it. And can we guarantee? No, there is no guarantee whatsoever. So best thing is go and vote. And if you're the religious type, you can have sembahyang hajat, whatever. But, you know, absolutely no guarantees. But we do the best we can, as always.
Thank you.
You've answered all the questions. So I guess I'll just jump to how do we reach the people that we haven't reached? Why are they apathetic? I suppose I speak for the youth. Okay, so with Trump and Brexit, right, a lot of people banked on the youth to go out in droves, because this is something that you would assume that liberal millennials disagree with in the cases of Donald Trump and Brexit. But here, with 1MDB, with a Prime Minister who holds both the portfolio of Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, and, you know, controls GLCs as a whole, it's a bit hard to like sit down and speak to people if they're not listening. So I think what we can do is do exactly what Bersih is doing again and again and again, and not stop. Because if we don't go out to vote, if the statistics are not there that the youth have come out to vote, they're not going to listen to what we want. It's not going to reflect. And like, if whatever I say will not matter if it doesn't show in the numbers. That is why they're not trying to appeal to us. That is why we have Tun as a PM candidate. If you think about it, I mean, if they really wanted to appeal to the youth, they would have fielded someone younger. They would have fielded younger candidates. They would have fielded, maybe, I don't know what their manifesto is, but like, this is a symptom of where we are at, and we have to pay for it, and we have to show them that we exist, and you don't exist in numbers if you don't go out and vote. I want the government to kneel at this point. I want them down on their knees. They need to listen to us. And they're not going to listen to us if we're not there. So yeah, I think do what Bersih says and tell people to vote, guys. It's not that hard. And in terms of, actually, I think you're talking about the Ketua Bahagians, like when you talk about division chiefs. I have a little bit of experience with this because if you remember the UKEC, they had, the University of Nottingham, they had students that were called by, the Malaysian embassy, and they were told like, oh, you can't say this, you can't have a petition to remove Najib's face on. They had that. But it wasn't, I spoke to one of the heads of the UK, the Club UMNO Pemuda Luar Negara, is that the right term? That one. Those kids, they're smart, they know that. But they weren't called by the Malaysian embassy, they were called by Ketua Bahagian. So I understand why there is this, why we don't address this. We don't talk about how much power division chiefs have. We don't talk about how much they have their puas inside of their party. Now it's sort of, I hope it really doesn't carry on to opposition, but it seems to be, before the elections, you all sort it out, please. Ketua Bahagians need to be held back, and I think one way we can do it is by them declaring the assets, them showing us how they spend the money, where they get it from, and because we pay for it, and that's the only reason we should be holding them accountable. It's our money. We're not talking about how this is our money. We're paying taxes. We're the one buying goods. We're the ones paying for their services as our representatives. Why are we not holding them accountable? You do that to your tuition teachers, your school teachers. It's inherent in us. It's our responsibility. Why are we not doing it? Yeah, I think that's all I have to respond to. Everything else has been addressed. So yeah, thank you.
Let me start with the first question on the division heads. If you read the reforms on the monetization of politics, one dimension of it is on internal party reforms. Now this is, I must say this, unprecedented. Many people even asked us, this is stupid. Why are you talking about internal party reforms? The reason is this. Money politics, when it first started and became a scourge in this nation, was within UMNO itself. And this goes back to the 1980s. And since then, the situation has become worse and worse. But I would say this too. The real problem of money politics from within parties being brought out into the general election was first most clearly manifested in 2013. And this I attribute to Najib. Najib's recognizing the way politics has been monetized in the party, now practices that kind of money politics in among the general electorate. Bribe everyone, cash handouts. So this is why when we talked about our reforms, we said, look at what's happening within parties too. Let me say this too. Are you telling me now that there's no money politics during party elections among opposition parties too? It does occur too. So the recommendation we are making is please clean up the whole way in which you run your own elections. That is as equally important as the general election, the financing of the general election. This is important because if you want young, vibrant candidates, new blood to move up, they have to enter the electoral process too within the party. And that is very hard to do if they do not have access to money and patronage. And that's why the division heads are always cornered by what they call warlords. And these warlords are actively funded by the president himself. The president just needs to control the Supreme Council and the division heads. He's got a party in his pocket. After all, let me remind you, this is a party of 3 million members. That's a lot of money to hand out, even if you have 2.6 billion in the bank. So, internal party reforms is just as important as the reform of money politics during general elections. And that is part of one of the recommendations that we have made. The second issue which I would like to address, let me end also by saying again, no take-up. Political parties don't want us looking inside in terms of how they run the elections. I'm afraid politicians have to be open and transparent. If you want to serve us, we want to know how you're serving us and who's funding you. Second, the issue on the malapportionment and the gerrymandering, and whether it's necessary to vote if we have serious malapportionment and gerrymandering. Yes, it is still important to vote. The popular vote also counts. But let me say this also. The malapportionment and gerrymandering was a serious issue in the 2013 election. And in spite of that, in the areas and the constituencies that really mattered, and here I'm talking about the Malay heartland states, if you look at the voting trends, the margin of victory on either side was only about 5%, 5-10%, in spite of the malapportionment and gerrymandering. In Terengganu, Barisan had 4 seats, parliamentary seats, and Pakatan had 4 seats, evenly divided. Among the state constituencies, it was evenly divided. In Kedah people were fed up with PAS. And they said, okay, we gave them a chance, but they're not performing, so we will change. It shows that people do understand what's happening. And they do vote in an informed manner. But the candidates and the policies matter. The politicians must inspire the electorate. So, in spite of the malapportionment and gerrymandering, which I do agree, tends to very much to favor the Barisan Nasional, all is not lost. They can still win Terengganu, they can still win Kedah, Perak can fall, Johor. This is very interesting. You can go down the list. Sabah. Every count, every vote matters. In spite of this. Let me end there. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the panelists for responding to those questions. I'm going to open now for a second round of questions. Again, same rules as before. Please, no speeches from the floor. Keep it direct to the point. Make sure there's a question in there. And I'm going to limit you to 1 minute. And I'm going to start with Ishwari over there.
Hi, Ms. Rama. Thank you very much. Hi, panelists. I'm Ishwari. I'm from Malay Mail. I would like to ask 3 questions. I'll keep it very simple. My first question is for...
Could you go closer to the mic, please?
Can you hear me?
Better,
All right.
Yes.
My first question is for Vaneisha, is it? Vaneisha, right. You see, you're part of the Challenger movement, right? And whose spokesperson is affiliated with a party. And that you spoke about race politics and whatnot and how you disagree with it. But the person affiliated with Challenger is also part of this political party that still champions race politics. And in his speech, or was it a statement some time ago, he said, give us 2 terms and then we will, reverse race politics. But are you buying this? So I would like to know, if we keep saying change is now, then why do we have to wait for 2 terms? Isn't that unfair for people who are voting, thinking that they can actually bring change? That's one. And number 2, I would like to know about this whole fiasco surrounding Undi Rosak. You mentioned your generation is mostly politically already fatigued. I'm part of that generation too. But do you agree that Undi Rosak is also one democratic way to channel dissent? Of course, we've heard of how it's going to, rupture the whole process of elections and whatnot. But I would like to know what the panelists really think about this. And also, there's a lot of name calling going on. Mariam Lee just lodged a police report today, and someone in this hall here actually posted something very derogatory. I'm not going to name him, but he's right here. I think he should know who he is. And the third thing, very important about asset declaration. Professor, you spoke about how it's very important to get people to declare where the source of funding comes into their political parties. But maybe, just maybe, can we start small? Why not both politicians from both sides of the divide? Maybe they can declare their assets first. Well, if you open the Selangor Exco website, not all of the Excos actually declared their assets. There are those who declared and there are those who did not. So how are the electorates going to feel confident, with this kind of system where the opposition is championing that we should not have all these things and then they themselves don't seem to be practicing? So that's all from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you for those questions. Over here.
My name is Raj. Thanks for the very lot of
points brought by the speakers, but there seems to be a lot of quiet about the local elections. Local elections seem to be a very expensive luxury for our inhabitants here. There seems to be a lot of veneration for where people are appointed as councillors in local election. I see neither parties in the political parties have got anything to say in their manifestos about local election, though they promise a lot of things. This time I don't know whether they have forgotten about all the local election. May somebody here tell us what is going to happen, or are there not going to be any local election at all?
Thank you. Thank you for that question. Gentleman over there.
Hello, my name is Danish. I'm from Tindak, Malaysia. Two questions related to elections. This is straight to Ambiga. On first question is, before the formal redelineation was done, the Election Commission committed stealth redelineation which resulted 118,000 voters got mysteriously shifted across the country. Is there a way we can jam this redelineation by filing a court case just to say that EC has pretty much committed an offense of doing a stealth redelineation? Secondly, about the electoral roll, suspicious voters, phantom voters. Yes, it is true the electoral roll is gazetted and cannot be challenged. However, during the height of the Reformasi period in 1999, the Likas election was conducted and there was presence a lot of phantom voters. In 2001, the court, one of the courts, I'm not sure whether in Sabah or Malaysia, ruled that the Likas election in 1999 null and void and forced a by-election because the judge was so convinced there were so many phantom voters and non-citizens were voting. Can we make a case that any seats that have a lot of suspicious voters can be challenged so that there will be no cheating using the premise of the 2001 ruling?
Thank you for those two questions. Thank you. Gentleman over there in black on my left.
Hello, nama saya Yamin dari Shah Alam. Saya rasa tertipu datang ke majlis ini, pelancaran, satukan tenaga, kalahkan penipuan. Tetapi tidak ada seorang pun bercakap dalam bahasa Melayu. Semua cakap dalam bahasa orang putih. Jadi boleh tak sesiapa cakap dalam bahasa Melayu? Terima kasih.
Terima kasih. Over here.
Right. Hi everyone, my name is Jason. I'm here on behalf of a student group in Australia, Malaysian Progressives in Australia. I address this question possibly to Ambiga, but really to anyone who is currently an active member of Bersih. The question is very simple. It is basically, when is the next protest? But I want to explain why I'm asking this question. Because, thank you. I want to explain why I'm asking this question because there's a lot of furor on the panel and amongst the opposition leadership here about why people like me who defend Undi Rosa aren't coming out to vote. And I won't have time to explain everything here because I've been kept to a 1 minute explanation. I encourage everyone to go out and read what it really means when we say we defend and not necessarily advocate but defend Undi Rosa. But I invite everyone to look at page 6 and 7 of this booklet that you've all been handed. Okay? And we've been given instructions on what we can do to change the electoral system for the better. How do we solve this? Vote. 100% voters come out to vote. Vote, vote, and vote. Page 7. What can you do? Register as a voter. Come out and vote on polling day. Make sure your friends and family come out and vote as well. Support Bersih Satukan Naga Kalahkan Penipuan campaign, which is to vote. Is that it? Is that the end point of democracy? We've been fighting for this vote for so long that we've forgotten that the vote is actually the weakest expression of democracy. I'm calling for I'm asking about when the next protest is because I know that there's a good chance that we will be handed a sham result that the courts aren't going to listen. And when that happens, the people need to be there to back it up. The government needs to be terrified of the people, not just because we're going to go out on one day and put a slip of paper in a box, but because if they refuse to listen to us, we will shut them down until we make them listen, right? And like, if we're talking about democracy, I think we need to understand. Like, I'm voting for Theresa because she owns the seat. It's an 85% majority. It's going to happen. But if there was a kid in an electorate who was going out with a choice between an UMNO and a Bersatu candidate, Chinese kid like me, how would I make that choice? Tell me how I would make that choice between those two parties. It can't happen, right? You want the youth out on the street, show them that the vote isn't the end of it.
All right, thank you. Thank you for that question. Thank you. Okay, last question.
Yes, my name is Eric. We read here kalahkan penipuan, but can you tell us when this person, this kleptocrat, this M1, when he really loses, is there any provision to have him arrested, number one? And also, what is going to happen within these 100 days about him? Because this is the first thing everybody is talking about. We want this guy in the lockup. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, please.
All right, I'll take two more. Yeah.
All right, the GE 2013 election, everybody knows that it was very flawed in the sense that, especially after the exposition of the 2.6 billion, so why was no action taken to declare the election null and void? Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Good evening, my name is JJ. On the point of term limits of prime ministers, Ambiga, my question.
Could you closer to the mic?
Test mic. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Mic is too low. I'm sorry.
You're too tall.
Yes. Ambiga, my question is to you. You mentioned just now term limits for prime ministers from your experience at the Bar Council. Would you also extend that to all levels of government, including chief ministers, Menteri Besars, as well as mayors? Thank you.
Thank you, JJ. Does anyone else have a question? If not, I think this will be the last round because I actually have 12 questions. So that's a lot to answer. So if anyone has a question, I'll just give you a few more seconds to come up to the mic and ask the question. If not, we will end with this round of questions. Okay, let me just summarize the questions so we're all on the same page. Some of them are directed to specific people, but I think others can also respond if you'd like to. There was a question specifically related to Challenger, and it's to do with race-based politics or race-based party and having to wait for 2 terms before that can be done away with. Can you explain that? And then about undi rosak, basically it is a democratic right. So what's wrong with undi rosak? And what about all the attacks that have been made against persons who supported undi rosak? And also we were told that Mariam Lee has lodged a police report today. The third one was about declaring sources of funding. Shouldn't all parties have to do it? Even in Selangor right now, there are many who haven't declared it. And what about that? Because I guess the implication there is there's no political will to make that happen. The fourth one was about local elections. This is one that a lot of people have actually given feedback to me about personally. The fact that this doesn't appear in the manifestos of both the major alliances, and someone also pointed out to me that it doesn't appear in Bersih's list. And so, the question to the panelists is, how important is this? Do you think it should be in? Then there's a question about, I love this term, stealth redelineation. The way in which the Election Commission teleports. You didn't use that word, but that's one of the words that Wong Chin Huat made famous. He talked about teleporting of voters. Now you see them, now you don't, because they've been moved from this constituency into another. And why haven't they been the subject of a court case, and why haven't the courts done anything about that? Then we have, similarly, the electoral roll, the suspicious voters, phantom voters, the success in Likas, because there actually was a by-election. I'm not sure if it was a by-election, but there certainly was an election that was declared null and void by the courts, and the judge, I think, paid a price for that. So it's like, are there cases like that can be raised next? Then there was a question about why are we using English and not Bahasa Malaysia in this forum. I'll answer that later. I thought the 8th question was a very interesting one. When is the next protest? I get messages practically every week asking me, hey, 2017 no protest, why? 2018, sure lah, now we can have a protest. So there's a question about why is there a next protest, when is the next protest? Again, I'm just listing that as a question, not expecting anyone really to answer it. I'll take it at the end. Now, someone said a vote is the weakest expression of democracy. This is what the person said. And the results are sham results. And the government needs to be terrified of the people. And this is basically a spirited defense of some of the people who are saying that you should either boycott the elections or spoil your vote, the undi rosak. So, is a vote really the weakest expression of democracy? I'm summarizing, so I'm not going to use every word that you give me. Then there's the question of the kleptocrats. Oh my goodness, why do we still have the kleptocrat in office? That's really a long moan and sigh. And you know, what to do with him? What to do with him now and what to do with him after the elections. Then there was the 11th question, which was the previous election was obviously severely flawed because of the 2.6 billion ringgit, some of which was used for the election, and so many other reasons. Why hasn't it been declared null and void? Then the 12th question was limiting the terms of office. If we limit it to 2 terms for the Prime Minister, what about for other offices? So there's a whole bunch of questions there, and I think we'll start again with Ambiga, if you don't mind, because many of them are related to you, and then we'll just go down.
Thank you for the questions. Now, let me deal with the undi rosak issue first, all right? Mariam, I know she suffered a lot of name calling, etc. That is totally unacceptable. And I know Hakam, we issued statements, and many civil society leaders issued issued statements on that. That is unacceptable. Whether you agree with a person's point of view or not, you can always disagree in a civil manner, and I don't think we should ever descend to that level of name calling that has taken place here. But you see that a lot of that on the internet, on Twitter and internet now, everywhere, because people can hide behind social media. They're brave enough to call names, right? When they have to do it to your face, maybe it's not so easy, but unfortunately this is the era we're in. But because of that, we must ensure that we do not accept and allow that kind of behavior to go on. Having said, okay, so now let me talk about undi rosak again, in this way. We are actually on the same side. Okay, we're not on opposing sides. Because you dislike the system. We dislike the system too. We say you must vote to change the system. You say you don't vote to change the system. So it's just a difference in our approach. Because for me, unless you change the government, and your anger and your passion, although you direct it to the panelists, really should be against the government, because they're the ones who are running everything and ruining everything. Now, the only way I can see change, and this is my personal view, and please don't think I'm imposing it on you, because it is your right not to vote. The only reason I think, the only way in which anything is going to change in this country is if we change this government. The only way I know how to change this government is to vote them out. But as I say, I'd love to have a conversation with all of you, and I've offered that actually on Twitter and so on. Let's talk it out, that's not a problem. But ultimately, it's your decision. The arguments are there. You know what the arguments are. But let me also give you a few facts. In Cameron Highlands, the margin of win by the Barisan candidate was about 400 plus votes. The undi rosak was 700 over votes. Undi Rosa caused the loss of a candidate who ought to have won. That's not democracy either. So beware of that, because that also can happen. The other thing is this: we've also had instances of people going to vote and finding out someone has voted in their name. So when you boycott or you don't go, you can't bet that your vote is not being used. That's the problem with the system that we have. So I would say go and protect your vote is another way of looking at it. Go and protect your vote, at least to make sure that there's someone who's not voting in your name. Now that has happened. Those are just little anecdotes. But for me, there's a big picture here. And as I say, absolutely democracy. Absolutely your democratic right. The question is whether the stand you take is going to bring the change that we want. And if it's not, I urge you to reconsider. But it's up to you. Now, what I would also, so then going on to the next issue, which is local elections. Good point. Excellent point, actually. Because that is an issue, ya, yang telah dibangkitkan local election, telah dibangkitkan oleh Bersih many times. Ya, issue election tempatan. It is a very important point, and we would like a commitment from all, from the opposition as well, that if they come into power, that is something they will look at. The other question, on the legal question, ya, tentang isu belah bagi, that is the backdoor redelineation, which has been taking place before the actual redelineation. Through some provisions in the law, they have been coming in through the back door and moving voters around. And that is something that has been happening. Yes, by all means, challenge it. Challenge it in court. You may be faced by an issue. They may say, look, you're out of time. It doesn't matter. Sometimes you file things in court because it is important that these things are brought to the fore. Now, the Likas case, that was where a very brave judge, despite pressure from senior judges, Justice Kamil Awang, he actually voided that election because of phantom voters, correct. But unfortunately, Section 9A was enacted after that case. And 9A says you cannot challenge the electoral roll anymore. And that's why it's more difficult. But, having said that, I believe that there are arguments, legal arguments, that can be used to still challenge the electoral roll. It's just a question of whether the judges are prepared and are brave enough to do it. Now, the election, 2013 election null and void, an action was brought in court, but they failed. It was struck out by the court. So something was done about the 13th GE, trying to declare it null and void. Then, Dennis, JJ, your question. Yes, I think it should extend to MBs, all those, the limited terms. Was that your question, JJ? Whether it should be extended to all those in leadership positions, MBs and all that. Yes, I believe so. 2 terms, and that's it. That's how I think it should be. It cannot just be for the Prime Minister, it has to be for all those in leadership positions.
Sebenarnya saya tak tahu yang mana nak jawab sebab saya bukan mewakili parti politik atau Bersih atau siapa-siapa. Hanya mengenai bahasa, sebenarnya kita semua diberi arahan untuk bercakap campur-campur bahasa Malaysia, bahasa Inggeris. Macam mana kita dah continue dalam bahasa Inggeris. Jadi saya minta maaf lah. Mungkin kita boleh address that later. Right.
I will. First of all, I'm grateful for the platform to explain Challenger, because I get this question a lot. Why is your spokesperson saying things? First of all, Syed Saddiq is no longer our spokesperson. the moment he received the call that PPPM was being formed, he left. He had that integrity to have that conversation with us. We were consulted, and yeah, he is not part of our thinking. He is no longer powering us forward. That's the way it is, and yeah. So I can't speak for him. I can't defend any of the statements he's made in the past. It's his. It's PPPM's. It's not my place to say. But whether or not I personally agree with it, that's another thing lah. But whether or not my organization agrees with it, it's really because we do have a few people who have political leanings who are pro-opposition. We have a pro-UMNO kid in Challenger. We have really good representation inside our group. And I cannot tell you how I feel about this without consulting all of them, because everyone has the right to say how they feel about race-based politics. My personal view is that we shouldn't have it. We should not have race-based politics. We shouldn't be talking, we're classifying race now according to like how maybe social class is divided. It's a big ethical conversation that we need to have after the elections. And I just think that question is a bit relevant. Regarding Undi Rosa, I was one of the first few to come out and defend Mariam before the CSO started releasing statements. And I think that conversation, I think it's valid. I really do think that people who want to spoil the vote, that's your right. But don't, under any circumstance, undermine the work that other organizations are doing, because we are so easily frustrated the moment someone says, like, oh, I don't want to vote. Can you imagine someone who has been campaigning to get people registered to vote the last 2 years? Obviously, they're going to attack you. The first feeling you're going to get is frustration. And that's why all that toxicity started. And I'm glad we're having this conversation now, because this is your right to have that opinion. I am just not of a similar opinion. I think you should all vote. And regarding our friend from the Australian, what was it? Okay, yeah, that one. The one who said that your only option is to vote in the Zui. I don't think it's your weakest option to express how you feel about the world. Because, you could go out and run, you could sign up in a political party and run, but as Prof. Terence, Prof. Edmund has just explained, it's very hard for new blood to move up if you don't have patronage, if you don't have money. So there are ways to combat systemic issues by either being in the system or doing your basic thing, which is just to go out and vote. If you want to put yourself through the hell of being in a political party, go for it. I have a lot of respect for people who have the stamina to continue in politics for a very long time. But it's not easy. That is your other option. We see it now in the United States. A lot of women did not agree with Donald Trump. I think now the highest number of representatives in US history has been of women coming up and saying, I'm running as a senator, I'm running as a congresswoman. And that's great, but is it time now? Can we control it? I don't know, but talk to your representatives. See what they're going to bring up in the next election. That's your right. Email them. It's not that hard. They have Twitter. Check what they stand for. It's so easy. It's not just the vote. It's whether or not that vote represents you. And we have that power. It's not weak. Like explaining this and repeating it is very hard. But you have to, please do. I think that's all I can address. If I have not addressed it, feel free to, maybe come up to me personally, and yeah, that's all.
On the first question on asset declaration, before the forum started, I told Rama that I will not be addressing any of the issues raised here because it's already been raised. The issue on asset declaration is here. It's on it's item 8 here under governance. I didn't feel the need to go and replicate what Bersih has already said in the short time that I was given. It is, of course, very important that all politicians declare their assets, especially before the election, so we can see how much they have gained post-election. The second issue, local elections. Again, Rama and I were having a discussion on this, and we were lamenting the fact that this is not here. It is fundamental. You must have local elections. We were promised this by the opposition also, I remember, in the run-up to general elections, but they have not delivered on this. This is something we should ask our politicians to institute in the run-up to the coming election. The third issue, The point was raised about MO1 and the GE13 and why nothing has happened in spite of that. Now this brings, I did tell you the story of how we took these reform proposals and went to a minister and we showed it to him. The thing that got his goat, scared the living daylights out of him, was reform of institutions involving devolution of power to them so that there can be checks and balances in the system. Immediately he said, no. Legislative reforms, fine, but don't touch the institutions. This is a fundamental reform we need if we want to deal with issues such as MO1 or the issues of the nonsense that we see in general elections. I'll give you some examples. The EC, how independent is the EC? The Registrar of Societies, Pakatan Harapan, can't get themselves registered. The Attorney General's office. One of our reforms is that the Attorney General cannot make the final decisions. He can only advise the government. We need an office of the public prosecutor that does the prosecution. There must be checks and balances there too. Bersih and C4 have been talking about this, but no change there too. In business, the Securities Commission. How much independence, I say now, does the Securities Commission really have? Bank Negara. Is Bank Negara really independent? And let's move on to other institutions. The MACC. Are you telling me that the MACC is truly independent? So here, if we want to talk about change, and this brings me to the question about the votes and, votes being the weakest thing, I don't agree. Institutions, votes are important, but institutions also matter because in a proper functioning democracy, there is equitable distribution of power between different arms of government. For that, there must be real devolution of power to ensure checks and balances. But let me address the last question on votes it's weak. That's, to my mind, utter nonsense. Let me give you some examples. 1969. In 1969, the people voted and change occurred. After 1969, we got a progressive policy, the new economic policy. After 1969, there was a political change in terms of the creation of even the Barisan Nasional because it was ostensibly their response to more inclusive governance. Yes, they may have hoodwinked us, but there was a disciplining of politicians in that election. The votes mattered. Later we see it again, 1990. In 1990 we see the breakaway of Semangat. UMNO Semangat being formed. Kelantan fell, Terengganu fell. We were expecting more of states in the west coast of the peninsula. But no, never mind. But still, change happened. Sabah fell. The votes mattered. It held the government accountable. Let's move forward. 1999, the Reformasi election. Again, governments fell, state governments. We didn't get the change we wanted. That means a real change of government. But that spoke to another point, institutions. Political institutions, the nature of political institutions. Who would have thought in 1999 that Lim Kit Siang and Kapal Singh would lose both state and parliamentary seats? Kit Siang later admitted, I knew we would either win big or lose big. By that he meant there were problems among the electorate as to whether DAP should be in coalition with PAS. And later, as you know, after Fadil died, DAP left the Barisan alternative. That means institutions, even in politics, matter. This is important for us to know in the run-up to this election. We, the electorate, do look at these things. And these things do matter because we are concerned about governance. And that's why we look to see how are they going to govern, what are the institutional arrangements. Some problems have arisen about who are leading these institutions now, the coalitions. We have to address and debate these issues. The third election, which I want to bring up, 2008. No analyst, I can tell you now, no analyst expected the election in 2008. Abdullah was shocked. The opposition was in completely gobsmacked. They had now control of 5 state governments. And you say that votes don't matter? It's the weakest link. 2013, they lost the popular vote. No matter what we may say, about the fact that, okay, the opposition didn't come. The fact is Najib was deeply embarrassed by the fact that he lost the popular vote. Unprecedented. Nationwide. Did it have an impact on him? Yes. I am deeply disappointed at UMNO too for not acting on this matter. That's why we are also talking about reforms. Internal party reforms are also necessary to check the concentration of power even within UMNO. These are the reforms that the country needs. And we can do it through the ballot box too. Do not deny or negate the value of voting.
All right, well, it's just after 5 o'clock. Thank you to all the panelists for responding to those questions. Time is not on our side, so I'm just going to hand it over to the MC. So before we do that, let me just ask you to give a round of applause for the panelists. Thank you.
Thank you, Rama, and to all the panelists. We have some small token of appreciation to our panelists today. I would like to invite Bevelin to deliver our small token to the panelists. Bevelin is our Bersih Sabah chairman. Dato Ambiga. Datin Paduka Marina Mahathir. Ms. Jean Vaneisha. Professor Edmund. And to our moderator for today, Mr. Rama Ramanathan. Thank you, Beth. Right, thank you, everyone. Yes, you can. We release you. Okay, this brings us to the end. Kita dah sampai ke penghujung acara pada hari ini. Saya ingin mengucapkan ribuan terima kasih kepada semua yang hadir dan sudi menyokong Bersih. Setakat ini kita telah mengumpulkan sumbangan dari semua yang hadir sebanyak RM3,742. Terima kasih. Dan kami masih mengalu-alukan lagi sumbangan daripada semua penyokong-penyokong Bersih. On your way out, like I've announced earlier, there are several booths outside. We have redelineation booth. We are collecting registration for pembantah ataupun objections untuk membantah bagi persempadanan semula yang sedang berlaku. Kita juga ada booth untuk registration voters, yeah? Yes, we have a booth that can register you as voters. For anyone who has not registered themselves as voters, please do so. It's outside. And I think that is all. Thank you again for coming by. And in view of the coming Chinese New Year, have a great Chinese New Year. After this, all the steering committees, please come on stage. we have a short media conference, press conference. Thank you again.